Hi everyone, my name is Victor, and I'm participating in the I'm Just Human project, which is to break the stigma for mental disorders and diseases, and hopefully reach out to others who are also in the same situation, or educate other people to understand that mental illness is not something that's abnormal. It's not something that should be put on the side, because frankly most people have some sort of mental illness, and it's time that we understand how much it deserves the attention it needs, so that we can bring better treatment, but also give the dignity and respect for people who do have one, sorry. The one I want to talk about is one that I've been dealing with for a good part of my life, and I still am. It's OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. For me, OCD began in 2003, and it kind of happened just suddenly. It just sort of like a light switch, it just activated. Just one evening I was watching TV, having dinner, and suddenly I felt like I had these questions inside me going on, and I couldn't even understand what they were, quite honestly, but they were just kind of happening underneath, and I guess my subconscious, my brain was trying to analyze them, and couldn't even make sense of them. So I started freaking out. It's like if I didn't have the answers to what I was seeking, or it was something was terribly wrong. And I started looking around me, and I was just asking myself, like, how is it that I'm seeing what I see? How do I understand this is reality? How is it that I can, it's just extremely existential questions that, quite frankly, weren't exactly easy to answer. And it's this questioning that led me to have a major anxiety attack at that point. Like, I started having ants all over my body, and the anxiety level just shot through the roof. It was something I had never experienced in my life. I felt almost like I could not feel connected with reality. It's like at that one point, a plug was disconnected, and I just lost connection with all of reality. And I just started walking around trying to take a deep breath, trying to understand what was going on with me, and it just did not make sense. I was just freaking out. And then I just went into the room, saw my mom, and just sat next to her and told her, like, I was just not feeling right at all. Like, it was really, really bad. And that was the start, basically, of what I was experiencing. Then, just after that night, pretty much every day afterwards, it just became hell for me. I was just going through this insane, self-questioning. Like, I just ask questions. You know when you say a word, you repeat it so many times, and in the end it doesn't make sense anymore. Almost, it feels like it doesn't have any meaning. That's kind of what it is when you have OCD, and you keep repeating the same thing over and over mentally, and in the end you're just like, what does this even mean anymore? I can't even, like, the answer itself doesn't make sense anymore. You just don't, like, you don't accept it. So anyways, it became really, really horrible for me to go in school, and that was my first year of college, and I remember going into philosophy class, and I was just feeling completely out of it. Also, the next day after that first the basically the activation, if you want to call it, I went to the family doctor, and he gave me Ativan, and it definitely helped reduce the anxiety level, but it did not reduce the actual obsessive thoughts. So, I knew that I needed something more than that, because it was really not making sense. It was not helping me, and it clearly was not just the temporary feeling that I was going to get. So, the week after that obsession started going away, and that's when I started experiencing something else, which was just philosophical questions. Anyways, I was questioning all the time things like, what is causality? How are we free? How do we make choices? And anyways, the actual obsessive thought is not really relevant to this, but it's just so you know that I was going through a lot of weird questions in my mind. And so, after a few weeks of the same mental rituals, I broke down and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Like it was taking over my school time, it was taking over my life. I just could not be happy anymore. Going into class, I was just having the same thoughts over and over. I just felt like completely depressed. Anxiety levels were insane, and just feeling of hopelessness was really just clouding all over me. I felt like I was part of like I was becoming a fatalist or a determinist or something of the sort. So I just felt like there was no way out of what I was going through, nor of what I had thought I had figured out about the way the world works, and it just made me so depressed. But at the same time, I just kept telling myself, this doesn't make sense. This what I'm going through, the way I'm suffering, the way all of this is. It can't be that way. Just because I thought I discovered something doesn't mean this is how life should be like. So while I was battling to prove myself right in my theories that I had figured out in my mind, I was also trying to fight them, or at least try to find a way to accept them as they are and just move on, because it shouldn't have to be this way. That's all I felt. I just didn't know how to explain it. I just knew that it just can't be this way all the time. So when I broke down and everything, I went to see the psychiatrist, and I told him exactly what I was going through, and I walked away that night with 3 different medications instead of just the Ativan that I was taking. I went with an antipsychotic because it was one of those things that can help, I guess, reduce the amount of obsessive thoughts that were going on. I mean, it was pretty bad, so I'm guessing that's why he had given that to me. He gave me Celexa, which is an antidepressant, an SSRI class antidepressant. I'm not really sure they had much of an effect because it's not really depression in the typical sense that I was going through, but it was just like a symptom of what I was experiencing, which is the anxiety principally and the obsessive thoughts. And then another anti-anxiety rather than the Ativan. Still, I was still going through a lot of mental questioning, and a lot of just a lot of time was spent on self questions of philosophy. And so that's when I started seeing a psychologist, and we went through therapy, and let me just say, 5, 6, 7 sessions, and I was already feeling way better. To be honest, I don't think I have the worst OCD in terms of severity compared to other people who have had it for decades. However, I can say that it definitely affected my life to the point where I was just, it was just terrible. Like, at 1 or 2 points, I had suicidal thoughts. I never really tried or attempted anything, but I know they were there. I just really wanted to get out of it. It was so terrible. One of the things, sometimes people think of when they hear OCD is, it's just probably some guy who washes his hands all the time. No, not really. OCD is a lot of things. You can have purely obsessional thoughts, which is that you just mentally go through the rituals and mentally try to solve your issues, which is what I was going through in the beginning. Then you've got the hygiene OCD, which is obviously what you often hear about, which is, people who are germaphobes or borderline germaphobes, and they'll be washing things for hours sometimes. And actually, I went through this the year after. I had a sort of a relapse, and at that time, OCD for me became, it had the compulsion aspect of it, and I was just convinced that I had a sexual disease. I had some kind of disease, anyways, and I had never had sex at the time. So, but I was just convinced mentally, and it made me so just intensely fearful. A level of anxiety that I don't think was even as bad before, but it was just terrible. Like, I had to go through to my therapist again because it was just really, really terrible. And at one point, I can tell you, I was washing my hands about 30 times a day, both on both the back of my hands. They became filled with rash. There were times where I would sit just to take a shower would take me an hour or more, because I was just trying to perfect the ritual, because I always felt like, oh, I just touched this on the side of the bathtub, and oh my gosh, this is going to cause me to have this. So I just repeated the whole thing over until I felt like it was a perfect wash. Other forms that I've had was the checking OCD, which is usually when you check something again and again until you feel like it feels like it's right. I used to read paragraphs. Like it would take me sometimes 15 minutes to go through one small paragraph, just because I was kept rereading it, because I thought I wasn't understanding it, and I was just. And the more you read, really, like I said before, the more you repeat something, the less it makes sense. So it did not really help that I was rereading it to understand it. But this is how this is how the ritual goes. You just repeat something because you think it's going to make it better, because your anxiety level is shooting up, and so that's how it works. You know, throughout all of this, I kept hope. I can tell you that a lot of people don't go through the level don't have the level of willpower that I had, because I kind of, my OCD started, and I was able to tackle it within months. For some people, they deal with it all their lives. And I think it really has to do with your desire to change things and to admit, first of all, that you have a problem, because if you are washing your hands 30 times a day, you gotta stop, and you have to tell yourself this is not right. If you just keep doing it, you're going to keep suffering. You're never going to really realize just how bad it was. And arguably the hardest thing about OCD is the treatment, because it is all about exposing yourself and conditioning your body against what you've conditioned yourself to do. And that can be pretty damn hard. You have to basically accept that you're going to face anxiety, because you're repeating something, you're triggering your OCD at times that you would wish you don't have to do, which is called exposure therapy. And that can be pretty hard, but you cannot give up, because after a few times of repeating these things and exposing yourself to them and teaching yourself not to let it get to you, it's going to make a huge difference. You're going to feel a lot better. One of the things also I like to explain to people is what OCD anxiety is like. It's not just your average anxiety. You know, you don't just feel a little bit nervous. We're talking when a really strong spike of anxiety happens. It's like basically, it's like somebody telling you someone in your family died. The shock that you get it's this high. Bottom line, I guess, you know, OCD is something that I'm probably going to have to deal with all of my life. There's really no cure as far as the world is concerned right now. I'm hoping one day there'll be something that can really drastically reduce it. But there are treatments that can dramatically reduce the symptoms, if not put them onto the back of your mind, and you might never have to deal with it for a long time. But the key thing is you need to have the tools. So today, even though I still get OCD, I have tools in my mind that I use, and I feel like it makes a huge difference. So yeah, like, just don't give up, first of all, and please don't have too much self-pride and then deny what you have. You have to admit that you have a problem, first of all, and then you have to go see someone about it. If you think that they can't help you, it's probably because you don't want to accept the help. You have to be willing to basically let the therapist talk to you and convince you otherwise. You have to be open-minded enough to let them exercise a sort of an influence on you, to let you feel the hope that you can recover and get out of it. Hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea of what it can be like to live with OCD. If you have any questions, you know, you can always send me a message, but you know, if you feel like this is taking over your life in some way, please don't delay. Do something about it. There is a lot more in life than having to put yourself into distractions like obsessive-compulsive disorder or any mental disorder. It's time to work at it and do something about it. And I feel like I'm really good proof of that, and a lot of people out there are as well. So yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.